everyone, and welcome to another edition of Pilots on the Fly. I'm Captain Bob Dallas. No, I'm not an actual pilot, but I am a huge aviation fan. Joining me again tonight is my good friend, my coach, and my co-host here on the show, Captain Cartwright.
Hi, Bob. Hi, everybody.
Captain, thank you so much for being part of this over here. And we have a special request here on TikTok because we are broadcasting on TikTok at the same time. We have Hannah, who says her daughter wants to become a pilot. Her daughter, Courtney, wants to become a pilot. So she's asked us to wish her a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, and hope to be a future pilot.
There you go. So there you have it. So Hannah and everybody else tuning in, Captain Cartwright is an actual pilot. He flies a Boeing 767. He's with a cargo company. He was with passengers, but switched on to cargo because apparently it's a different world and he likes it so much better. So, Captain, since last time we had our show, and it's almost a month. That's quite a while. Lots of stuff has happened during that period. Tell us just a little bit about that tail swap you had in Los Angeles over the weekend.
Sure. Be glad to. Well, we had a issue with maintenance. We had to swap out a airplane after it had already been loaded up in Los Angeles. That was just Saturday, as a matter of fact. And had the whole plane loaded up with about 86,000 pounds worth of cargo and about 65,000 pounds worth of fuel. To go from LAX to Cincinnati. So after I'd gotten there, I'd been told that we may have an issue with a tail swap. And sure enough, the airplane, they could not fix the issue in time. So what they did was decide to offload the cargo to another airplane that we had there that was ready to go. And unfortunately, it took a little while, about a 5-hour delay.
Whoa, but you got there safely, and that's what counts.
Sure enough.
So for Courtney, who's going to become a pilot, and all the other people out there who don't necessarily know what a tail swap is, what is that?
All right. For instance, when you have a tail, we call it a tail because it's got a number on it. So there's two different numbers that we use as an airline pilot. So we use the N number, which is in North American is a registration number. And so, like, for instance, 760 Charlie Kilo is one of our aircraft, and we swapped it off of 768 Alpha X-Ray. So those are the November 760 Charlie Kilo and 768 Alpha X-Ray tail numbers that go along with the registration. Now, the flight number that we use and that we talk about and that you can look up using apps like FlightAware is the route number that we use. So that would start like something like ABX 602 or ABX 905 or whatever, depending on the route and the airline. It could be something like DL 802 or 503. So depending on the airline or the particular air or the route that it has, that it could be either one. So,
okay, well, that's very interesting. And just for the sake of it, a lot of times you're going to see an aircraft that has that registration number, and anytime you see an American airplane, the way to recognize it is that the registration starts with the letter N.
That is correct.
All right. So
if you're an Canadian aircraft, for you, it all starts with a C.
It's either C-F or C-G, and if you're flying a glider, it's C-I.
Mm-hmm.
So, folks, we have a really interesting show for you tonight. We have actually our show had a bit of an impact last night, James. We broadcast on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and on YouTube, and someone spotted us on LinkedIn, and he liked the content that we had so much that he asked to be a guest on our show. So he's here with us tonight. He's backstage. He's an interesting fellow. He's an aviation entrepreneur. He's got one of his companies that's in Buffalo, New York, a successful gentleman. He's got an aviation, a consortium of aviation companies. We're going to let him explain exactly what it is. All that to say is that he's a very interesting man. I'm seeing the comments going up here on TikTok. They're exploding. Wow, this is just, it's so kind of you. Thank you so much. Austin says he's a fan. Thank you so much for tuning in. We got some great people behind the show making this a great show. Thank you. So all that to say that we have a very interesting gentleman who's joining us tonight. And before we bring him onto the show over here, we're going to show you a little promotional video just to let you know who he is exactly.
Private Jet Maintenance is your source for maintenance, repair, and overhaul services in the New York tri-state area and Florida. Avoid expensive, painful downtime on your jet. If you own or maintain an executive business jet, especially one manufactured in the year 2000 or before, you may have gotten the cold shoulder from OEM service centers like Dassault Falcon Jet, Bombardier, and Gulfstream for the simple reason that they do not want your business. They're too busy with warranty work, their young technicians don't understand how these classic jet systems work, and for that reason, if you're able to get a slot at one of these OEMs, expect to pay through the nose and expect your job to take forever. Downtime of your jet leads to huge outside charter costs and a lack of control, which is probably why you bought your business jet in the first place. At Private Jet Maintenance, our average technician has 23 years experience keeping private jets in state-of-the-art condition. Scheduled inspections, avionics installations, engine inspections, removal and replace, aircraft interior service, A checks, B checks, C checks, D checks, landing gear overhauls. About the only thing we don't do is paint. If you own a classic business jet, don't trust your asset to anyone else. Whether you need to punch out a due list, your jet is broken and you need AOG support in the Northeast or Florida, or if you're looking for an outsourced maintenance department for your aircraft, my guys Ben Chifo, Scott Knopp, Brian Judah, and their team know how to keep your plane flying safely, compliantly, and they'll always shoot you straight. We have hangars with highly skilled technicians in New York and Florida. To discuss your airplane MRO needs, please contact our Director of Maintenance, Ben Chifo, directly at 716-863-4200.
Well, there you have it. That's quite interesting. We have a really, I keep repeating about it. I just love tonight's show. This is like really interesting for you aviation fans, for the smaller jets, the private jets who are inclined to that. You're going to be well served tonight. Without further ado, let's bring on tonight's guest, who's coming to you live from Boston, Massachusetts, aviation entrepreneur Justin Sullivan. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
James.
Have you as well.
James, go ahead and start the honors.
Okay. Yeah. Just a couple questions I've got. We'll start off with, can you explain the jet charter industry? Because it is definitely one of the questions that would probably interest a lot of people.
Certainly. So fundamentally, there are high net worth individuals, athletes, entertainers, business owners, companies who don't own an aircraft and desire to fly from point A to point B. And on the other side of the continuum are aircraft owners who have capitalized the purchase of a jet, and they've done so for whatever reason. But more often than not, those owners don't have the proper licenses and certifications and whatnot to hold out air transportation. So in our industry, there's something called a Part 135 air carrier, which is an entity that's been given economic authority here in the US by the FAA to hold out commercial air transportation. So these are called Part 135 air carriers. And there's a middleman in this business that connects basically these air carriers who are operating aircraft on behalf of owners. So a high net worth individual will buy a jet and lease it to and through an air carrier who has the economic authority to hold out commercial air transportation. And they will provide that service to those retail customers, those high net worth individuals and companies who desire to access that transportation. And in the middle of that are air charter brokers. So that's what I have been for almost 20 years of my aviation career, is a jet charter broker, which is basically a glorified travel agent where you're matching your client's needs with solutions provided by air carriers. So having gotten into this business about 20 years ago, I built up a big retail business and launched a parallel career path that's ultimately led me to controlling my own Part 135 air carrier, which I own, and affiliated maintenance company, because obviously maintaining these aircraft is a big cost center and a major discipline. So having that control over our product and the planes gives us basically for not that you asked, but a vertically integrated business model that serves the owners of our jets and our charter customers alike.
And I'd like to expand on the 135 part just a little bit as well, just to kind of give a little better, simpler explanation to our audience. 135 basically means you're starting at one point and ending at another point, and it doesn't matter the size of the aircraft, but the fact that a private individual hires a person that has an aircraft to be able to take them from one place to another place and drop them off pretty much requires a 135 charter. So your business is specifically in jets, and but there's also other 135 charters outside of that too, for smaller prop planes as well as bigger jets than what you handle as well. But I just want to kind of just give a little bit broader explanation to our audience to kind of simplify it as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
So James, tell us, how did you get started in the jet charter industry?
So many years ago, I was in tech sales, and 2004, 2005, the market was changing, and I was frankly, it was less interesting. A good friend of mine left the company I was working with and went to work for Ascension Jet, which here in the Boston area is the resident 800-pound gorilla, providing retail solutions in the jet charter industry. And as soon as I heard about the industry, I was very enamored with it. I like geography, I like travel, I like aviation, I like people, I like high net worth families. And I could see myself taking into it like a duck to water, and started off going to work for a very large jet charter brokerage and learning the industry from the ground up. So that's the rough and tumble world of jet charter brokering. You're dealing with dozens of clients on a day-to-day basis, and you become the product and mastering all of the ins and outs and making sure that your clients who are investing a lot of money in these transactions. I mean, I often tell my guys at the company that our average transaction size is like selling a newer used car on one individual flight. That the economic value of that car for the customer standpoint, it evaporates within 6 hours. It's just an amazingly expensive undertaking. So it better be perfect. And as the client-facing person who's putting it all together, you've really got to know your stuff, from the differences between the airplanes, the mission capabilities, and the level of luxury, the luggage capacity, the range, the airspeed, the passenger configuration, and really knowing your clients and being able to match those things. And obviously budget is a very large consideration. So I've been doing this business. I continue to do that. I'm a very prolific jet charter broker, and I've been serving many of those same clients from 18, 19 years ago to this day, those families, those companies. About 7 years ago, I launched a parallel career path whereby I wanted vertical integration. I wanted tighter alignment with the product. And I didn't have the certification that Captain Cartwright just mentioned, the 135 air carrier. So I started a business within a business where I was managing, conceptualizing airplane owners to buy a plane, and then managing them through other Part 135 air carriers who had that economic authority. So it's basically leasing the planes to and through them and handling the charter side. And after 5 or so years of doing that, I learned a lot, and I certainly never could have made the jump into controlling my own 135 and 145 repair station without a lot of trial by fire and really learning from the pros, learning from the director of operations at these companies,
Yeah.
the chief pilot, the director of maintenance, and really getting my feet wet to a point where I could build and control my own fleet of planes. Now, I often joke that because of the industry and the clientele that we're in, it's obviously a very high net worth oriented industry. And in so being, I know a lot of high net worth people. I know these people for a long time. So when it came time for me to capitalize the purchase of my own 135 air carrier certificate, luckily I have a base of clients who know, like, and trust me, and who helped me capitalize the business that we have now.
Absolutely. I agree. And one thing that you hit the nail on the head is knowing your client and knowing their expectations, especially in the higher end business that you're in. So that's great. As we're talking about that, maintenance is a big issue when it comes to moving these aircraft and using these aircraft. So, how do you maintain the fleet of charter jets, and what all goes into the aircraft maintenance that you deal with on a daily basis?
So there are a couple different sides of the maintenance coin. One is preventative maintenance, which is effectively keeping the aircraft current and compliant to its manufacturer's maintenance program. So just like your car, when the service E light comes up and you've got to bring it back to the Volvo dealership for service E, and they have a 222 point inspection that they do at service E. Maybe they change the timing belts, they rotate the tires, and do 200 other items. Aircraft are on the same manufacturer's maintenance program, which is obviously much more complicated, and in the Part 135 charter world, heavily regulated. So we're constantly tracking the maintenance schedules of our airplanes. We use computerized maintenance tracking through a program called CAMP, which every hour, every landing, it tracks many different data points for the aircraft, and it manages those clocks based on time and hours and cycles and other data points to tell us and give us an ongoing forecast of the maintenance that's due on any one of the aircraft that's in our fleet. Now, that's obviously preventative maintenance, keeping planes to the extent that you can flying, without service level interruptions. James, you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that you had a mechanical out in LAX, and that happens in our line of business as well. Mechanicals do happen, and while we have teams of technicians that are, the charter market really triangulates between the Northeast, Southeast, and West Coast. So we've got a base of operations in Buffalo. We've got a base of operations in Texas and Florida. We don't have anybody in the West Coast. So if there is an incident or a maintenance discrepancy that happens, say on the West Coast, the first thing that we would do is every one of the aircraft in our fleet has what's called an MEL. It's a minimum equipment list, it's a list that's been blessed by our local FAA regulatory authorities for items that are not essential to safe operation. So, say hypothetically, we use a silly example, the ashtray of your jets, we don't allow smoking, but planes do have an ashtray. The ashtray popped out, so that's a silly example of something that would not be covered by the minimum equipment list, and our director of maintenance would still be able to, in a compliant manner, dispatch that flight. Now, we can use another example that's not as simple, like an APU blowout in LAX or in Van Nuys, and naturally that's a much more complicated, expensive, And it's compounded by the fact that we don't have technicians that are in LAX. So in that case, we're contracting with other Part 145 repair stations that are duly licensed and have the authority to work on these airframes. And they're fully documenting the work that they're done. So there's a very big paper trail. It's called a work order release or a work order. It's basically all of the compliance related items that they've undertaken, and their sign off based on, typically it's the A&P or the shop itself that's signing off on that. And then they're once the aircraft is returned to service, they're providing our maintenance department with all of those records, which then go into the binders in a fireproof vault at our offices in Buffalo. So that there's a very orderly paper trail of any maintenance that's been done on these airframes. And that's very important to the owner of the jet, because these are, in our world, $2 to $3 million assets. So protecting the residual value of that is a big part of our job as really fiduciary managers of that asset.
So Justin, tell us, how do you hire your pilots? What is it that you look for exactly when hiring a pilot?
Well, frankly, we operate mostly Falcon jets. We have a couple Lear jets on our certificate, but we're known to be a Falcon shop. And to be very frank with you, we look for pilots that are current in a Falcon 50 or Falcon 900. One of the advantages of the Falcon 5900 platform is that it's the exact same pilot type rating for a 50 versus a 900. So that gives us a great deal of flexibility in terms of our crewing. And it also opens up a larger universe of available pilots. The reason that we do that is twofold. It's really, these are our kind of brass balls business discussions, but there's a time to value. So if somebody is already current in a Falcon 50 or 900, or attended simulator school in the last 2 years in one of those platforms, they can come in and do a recurrent training with us, which is a 5 to 7 day event at CAE or Flight Safety. And that'll have a cost of $12,000, $13,000 plus expenses. If somebody has never flown a DA 50 or 900 before, say they're a Learjet pilot or a Citation jet pilot, they're going to have to go through simulator training with an initial, which can be, depending on their qualifications, as long as 30 days, can be $40,000. So not only is it a lot more expensive, and in our business model, these are expenses that are borne by the owner. So the owners of the jets pay 100% of the expenses, and they get 100% of the cash flows after expenses. So again, we're fiduciaries for our owners, and we try to be as economically sensible as possible. We advertise for pilots constantly on Climb to 350. I've tried some other platforms for pilot hiring, and frankly, just nothing touches Climb to 350 in terms of the volume of people. Everybody's there, and for us as the hiring party, it's a free service, so it's worth its weight in gold. And naturally, Bob, the Falcon, it's a small community. Everybody knows everybody, so Falcon pilots do know each other. Our planes are really nice. They've got some great curb appeal. So, and these pilots run into each other at FBOs and they shoot the breeze. So we're getting referrals. Like, our pilots are our best recruiters, because they're really out there in the FBOs and meeting guys and gals. And I think there's no substitute for that, because we have something unique to offer our pilots. While we're based Buffalo, South Florida, our planes don't live in a home base. So our planes are 100% dedicated to the floating on-demand, point-to-point jet charter world, which means that we don't have to hire pilots that are Florida or New York based. Our pilots live all over the country, literally all over the country. And they airline to their assignment on day one, They work their rotation, and then they fly home on the last day of that rotation. So it's a different gig for a charter customer, or for a charter pilot who's maybe used to something that's less intensive. We fly about double the number of hours as a traditional charter jet, but oftentimes charter or Part 135 pilots, they don't have a life, because while they live near their home base of the aircraft, they're often constantly on call. That's not how we work. They're on duty when they're on duty, and they're there for that rotation, and then they go home, and they can plan that schedule 6 months in advance. And I know that a lot of our pilots are out doing contract work because they're young guys and they don't have families, and they're building their own wealth, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. And that's very important too, because pilot flexibility and pilot being able to schedule something like that versus being on call all the time gives you a lot better pilot desirability for us being an employer for that pilot.
Yeah, I think being home based, we have to hire a lot of pilots, and we lose pilots, so we have to be able to continuously backfill those positions. So not being if all we were hiring was pilots out of New York, we'd be hiring an awful lot of pilots who are not current in a 50. We'd be sending them to initial instead of recurrent.
And I completely agree with what you're talking about on being able to use the dual type rating for the 900 and the 50. Similar to the situation I'm in, I'm a 7.6 and a 7.5. I'm dual type rated. Even though I don't fly a 7.5, I get both types when I go get the 7.6 type, and that enables me to be more marketable as well too, as a pilot. So because I already have that type, and as you said, the training is expensive. So just out of curiosity, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just out of curiosity, speaking of that, I have a very good interest in a 135 charter of my own, and we'll talk about that some other time. But the 135 interests me on just the all the mechanics and the goings on of how to run that mechanic. Not only from the maintenance perspective, but the leasing the aircraft to being able to be there for your clients and stuff too. So what do you consider probably one of the single most challenges that you deal with in that 135 ownership?
Operational challenges abound in this business, and naturally we operate classic business jets. Our oldest aircraft was manufactured in 1981, so Ronald Reagan's first term. Our newest Falcon was manufactured in 1994. So these machines do break. You have very important missions and important clients who I've known for a long time, and clients who I don't know. They're all just as important. But frankly, the operational matters of keeping the trains running on time, keeping our pilots where they need to be, keeping our pilots retained. That's an awful lot harder than growing the business, and it's frankly, I don't want to grow it too much bigger because it's an awful lot of work just keeping this going. I'll share with you and your audience that as a 135 air carrier, you're required by the FAA to have 3 key management positions. They're called FAA Part 119 management positions. A director of operations, who's really your primary, he's the man who runs the airline. A director of maintenance, and a chief pilot. These are 3 highly paid key roles that we have, and these are people who really are the ones who do make the trains run on time. Between private jet maintenance and our 135, I'm 45 years old. I'm the youngest person by far on our management team, and they run their own business. They run their affairs. They know the safety. They know the compliance. They know what we can do, what we can't do. I'm often, brought in to answer financial questions, to provide a sounding board and bless things. but it really, I wouldn't want to be the person to interfere with those people, because lives are at stake in our extremely precious cargo. The business is exceedingly valuable, and the only thing that could be a threat to that is a compliance violation, which would be detrimental, and secondly a safety incident or accident. So I'm glad that I'm the head cheerleader and out here doing things like this, and I'm not the highly skilled professional. I'm not a pilot myself, and I think building that team and having people who I have a great deal of respect for, who are making those operational decisions. I can Jesus take the wheel.
Yeah. Well, and you said something there. Liability in those key positions is really high, and that's what makes this business difficult and hard to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Justin, let's say a Canadian pilot coming out of Canada wants to come and work for you in the U.S. Can you help this Canadian pilot get his green papers to come and work for you?
We can. It's a lot of work to do that. We haven't done it lately, but it's certainly something that we can do. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, there has to be a reason to do it. Like if somebody was a Falcon 50 pilot and they're cool working a long shift and want to work extra days, because we always need pilots on extra days. We'd certainly look at something like that.
Do pilots you have some pilots on your staff that are actually flying, let's say, these bigger jets, and let's say on their layoff time, and they're because I know pilots, like, maybe in some cases maybe work 12 days a month in some cases. During their time off from their major airline, do they come and fly for you, or do they actually fly for other charter companies?
They don't fly for us. So all of our pilots, 100% of our pilots are full-time employees. And in so doing, if you're a charter pilot on our fleet, you have to go to simulator training under our training program. So how it really is flight safety is administering our Part 135 approved training program. CAE is administering our Part 135 training program. So we use an example of a competitor operating Falcon 50s, a company like True Aviation, a very fine company. They also have a fleet of 50s and 900s. Unless we took their pilots and sent them to flight safety, they could, under our program, just because they took a True Aviation flight safety program last week, they couldn't fly charter for us. So it's really like the inverse of what you're stating, Bob. It's our pilots who go to our simulator training, right? Part 135 approved under our program. They can then go fly Part 91 for other high net worth individuals on Falcon 50s and 900s. Or if they happen to be type rated on something else, they can do that as well. But you're not going to find a lot of guys who are working a busy charter schedule who are maintaining two dual type ratings, unless it's a 50 and 900. They're not going to go to Lear school to work Lear jets on their off days. There's so much business right now for these guys. Contract pilots are, I've never seen prices like day rates that these guys are getting. So, and especially in the 50s and 900s, there's a lot of those planes out there, and there's not that many pilots, so they can always keep themselves busy.
Well, and I'll help answer part of that question too, Bob, because that does bring up a good point. Now, we're talking about 135 charter. Now, under the airlines like I work for, we fly under 121. Now, 121, when we work for a 121 carrier, we have certain amount of hours that we can only work in a month. Like us as a pilot, we can only fly 100 hours. We can only have a butt and seat for 100 hours. Now, when we go to work for a carrier like I work for, an air carrier such as Delta or United or American. Now they own your full 100 hours for that month. Now they may not utilize those 100 hours. Now I'm lucky where I'm at. Try to fly on an average of about 40 to 50 hours a month. And so that leaves me open time, but I cannot actively use that time at another carrier without having some approvals from my company that I work for. So you don't see a lot of that in the 121 or people flying the bigger jets in the 121 charter or 121 air carrier operations go to the 135 as part-time. So that does create a problem there. So
what's great is that all the aviation fans out there tonight, and every time they tune into one of our productions, is that they're learning. This is a learning process, at all times. But what I find particularly interesting is that I am learning so much tonight. I mean, this is just so amazing, guy. I'm just like, wow. I thought I knew a lot about aviation, but man, I got a long way to go.
It's all an onion layer. Just keep peeling the onions.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm having a whole load of fun doing this. And we have great guests like Justin, who's joined us tonight. Justin, for the people who would like to reach you after hearing what you had to say on such a great, interesting show tonight, this is his Facebook link. You can reach him on Facebook. You can reach him on LinkedIn as well. And if you want to go through email, you can always go right here. Folks, take a snapshot of this, or actually a screenshot, or you can always watch the show afterwards. We rebroadcast it anyway. You can watch it over and over again. And of course, Haas, our good friend over here, if you want to get, he's really, really insightful, very knowledgeable, knows a lot about aviation. Want to go on to his social media outlets, that's where you can reach Haas on LinkedIn. You can reach him on Facebook, and you can also reach him on YouTube on this channel over here. And as for myself, Pilot Bob Dallas is mostly the name I go under. You can go onto LinkedIn, you go onto Facebook. I got my own personal page. I'm on Twitter, I'm on TikTok, I'm all over the place. I'm not a pilot, but I fly like a pilot. Justin, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was so much fun, so insightful, and we hope you're going to come by again.
Yeah, wouldn't miss it again. Thanks so much, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you for coming on, and thanks for all the helping me learn some things about your business. I love doing that.
And to both of you, please stand by. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be closing off the show, but stay behind and backstage. We're going to be having our little party, our after hours. So don't go anywhere as I close off the show. Captain Cartwright, thank you so much for being such a great friend, a great coach, and a great co-host. And we'll be doing this again very soon. Jenny Duhane, thank you so much for producing our show. And thank you to everyone for tuning in tonight on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on TikTok. Thank you, folks. On TikTok, this applies for you. You still have a couple of more minutes over here. I'm going to be signing off, but I'm going to be staying on with you a little bit longer, and you guys can catch a bit of the after hours party. The poll tonight, which manufacturers got it right? Is it Airbus or is it Boeing? You still don't have time to answer. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And good night to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.